Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about transit Pluto square opposition or inconjunct one's natal Jupiter. Now, when we're talking about transits that involve Pluto, it can be about power, control, transformation, a crisis, desire, even obsession and fixation. Now, when you have transit Pluto basically making an adverse aspect to one's natal Jupiter, I'm going to elaborate on that. When I say basically adverse aspect, okay, squares and oppositions, of course, those aspects are adverse and negative in astrology. Now, the inconjunct aspect, though it's neutral, neutral aspects can have good and bad qualities in them. Excuse me, coupled with the fact that an inconjunct can often require an adjustment or a transition. And of course, those things can cause some tension and exasperation. Now, when you have this again, when transit Pluto is basically making an adverse aspect to one's natal Jupiter, well, it may manifest in power, control, transformation, a crisis, desire, fixation, obsession. These things may conflict even with in expanding horizons in some cases. If you're in a situation where you're in a power struggle with somebody, or there may be a crisis that's going on in your life, say the transit Pluto's in the fourth house, it could be a crisis with a home or family related matter. Or even if you might be renovating or transforming a home, it might be causing some difficulty, whether it's a distraction or what have you, in trying to expand the horizons at this time. And Pluto-related things generally at this time may not be things you may be overly enthusiastic or exuberant about. I mean, whether it's trying to deal with a crisis now, hardly anybody's going to be enthusiastic about that, but it'll be less so at this time and less positivity connected with that. And matters when you're trying to gain control in your life. You have transit Pluto, say, in the second house in your chart. It could be trying to gain control of your finances and things like this. Pluto, power, control, transformation, Pluto-related things in general. Generally, will not be things you're going to be, again, overly enthusiastic or exuberant about at this point in time. And the thing about this too is that when you have, Jupiter is connected to truth and veracity. And the thing is, when you have, this transit, it may be harder to really see the truth. It could be in people you're in intimate relationships with. It might be maybe somebody had a transforming effect on you, or even seeing the truth and maybe some power issues you may be dealing with, control issues. Maybe you've become such where you've you have become somebody that has exerted maybe more power, try to exert more power in a situation than what was necessary. And or maybe even a death you may have experienced. It might be harder at this time, more so than usual, to accept the truth and understanding what has happened, and trying to move forward from that. Another thing is that Jupiter is also connected with the law, and remember, Pluto is associated with crime and corruption. In some remote cases, it could be where a person might have some trouble with the law during this transit. It can be a situation too where dealing with if there's any crime in your community, it might have effect on you more so than usual on your happiness and expressing jocularity, being jovial at this time. And also too, when you have, keep in mind, Jupiter is associated with our philosophy and beliefs, and also, Jupiter is also associated with religion. So to be careful about somebody trying to indoctrinate us at this time during this transit, if you're having this transit, indoctrinating with a false religion, as an example, or trying to forcibly accept your beliefs, or vice versa. It might be at time, because remember Jupiter is about, it's connected with religion and creatures. Pluto is associated with manipulation, it's coercion, and another thing too that anatomically speaking, Jupiter is connected with the liver, the pancreas, the sciatic nerve, the hip, and obesity even. And this could be a time where it might be harder to control those issues. If you have these issues, especially prior to this transit, this could be a time where those issues might be harder to really keep at bay or keep at a level, where it's reasonable, where it's whether you want to call it less traumatic or less physical pain or what have you at this time, or uncomfortable, where you're less uncomfortable physically at this time. It might be harder to do so at this time, more so than usual. There may be power struggles with in-laws, or there can be a situation where you might be dealing with manipulation from these people at this time. And keep in mind too, Jupiter is also connected with recklessness, and it's really be careful this time. You're not, Pluto is compulsive energy. Jupiter is recklessness. If you're somebody that gambles, hoping you're doing it legally. If you're somebody that gambles, there might be a greater propensity for doing it more compulsively and being more obsessed with it, more so than usual at this time. And of course, if you're somebody that becomes like this reckless, compulsive gambler, it can be a time where you may be more inclined to lose money as opposed to gaining. And Jupiter is also connected with extravagance, and might be harder to control any issues with that at this time. You may be having as well, Jupiter is also associated with higher education. So again, Pluto is a very obsessive, fixated energy. You don't really want to become overly obsessed or fixated with anything. That can include higher education. That could also be associated with traveling abroad. You might not get, if you're in a situation, if you're a younger person and you're trying to get support from family or what have you at this time, it might be harder to get it at this time. Pluto is connected with support, whether it may be emotional, monetary, or just moral support as well. And it might be harder to get the support, in this case, say monetary, for matters with higher education or traveling abroad at this time. Now, another way that this transit may manifest, it could be where you may become overly obsessed with sports, as an example. If you're somebody that's a sports fan, say if Jupiter is in Aries, it could be some kind of combat sports or boxing, wrestling, as some examples. If Jupiter is in Gemini, it could be a sport that requires like quick reactions, such as like badminton or table tennis, as some examples. Now at this time as well, another way this transit may be expressed, it could be a crisis, may challenge long distance journeys or even publishing at this time. Let's say if the natal Jupiter is in Capricorn, as an example, it could be long distance journeys that may have been well planned and premeditated. It might be government related. Now also too, it may be harder to control, again reiterating what I was saying previously, it might be harder to control extravagance at this time. And even if you're somebody that's not overly extravagant, it could be a situation where you feel like you're forced to pay more money than you originally anticipated in something. If the natal Jupiter is in the 6th house, say, it could be something connected with health related matters. I'm going to have this transit is not far from me right now. I have my natal Jupiter in Libra in the 6th house of health. Transit Pluto is not far from making that square to it, so I can only imagine what could be happening in my future as far as matters connected with health. Remember that Jupiter, as I've stated in previous videos, it's very paradoxical. It's very strongly benign and benevolent, but it could also have a tendency to enlarge and expand issues. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, now also too, and again, again, it could be hard to control extravagance. Say if natal Jupiter's in Sagittarius as an example, it could be something, spending on something connected with sports or the outdoors or exploration. It could be publishing materials. Now, there may also be power struggles with in-laws or even foreigners at this time. It could be people that you may know that are prominent in some religious congregation you may belong to. Let's say if the natal Jupiter is in Leo as an example, it could be dealing with, these people may be very domineering or arrogant, even bombastic. Now, it may be, this is a time too, where surgery, if you have any surgery at this time, Pluto's connected with surgery, it may make it harder for you to be jocular and jovial at this time. I know that could be true regardless of transits, but it might be more emphasized and pronounced with this one more so than most. Now, let's say, for example, if the natal Jupiter is in Taurus, it could be, expressing body humor. This might be some humor that you like to express. Also, too, if there's any issues, say with the colon, the prostate, the bladder, those things are anatomically connected with Pluto, it might adversely affect your general exuberance and enthusiasm at this time. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.